Good evening, and welcome to Darien League of Women's Candidates Night. Can I ask everybody to please rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Thank you, and welcome. Candidates Night is organized each year by the League of Women Voters, so our community has the opportunity to meet candidates who are running for elected office in our town and surrounding neighborhoods. Tonight, the candidates will be asked to respond to a series of questions that have been submitted through a variety of platforms. We encourage participants to continue to submit questions throughout the evening, either through our sorters on the ends of your aisles or through our League of Women's Debate email channel. The League of Women Voters works throughout the year to bring information to the community so that voters can make an informed choice when you head to the polls in a few weeks. The League of Women Voters believe that good government doesn't just happen. Good governance is created by citizens who are engaged in the process of governing. Before we go any further, I need to point out that the auditorium has a few exits in case of emergency. There are 3 exits behind you. Here's my little flight attendant. There are 3 exits behind you, 2 exits in front of you, and if you're in the balcony, you can go down the stairs and out the front. Perfect. Okay. Second, I'd like to recognize and thank all the candidates for their attendance tonight and for choosing to serve in this beautiful community of Darien. We understand that public service is often a thankless and time-consuming job, but because of your commitment to your job, the overall success of our town is something we all benefit from. Please keep in mind this is a municipal election. We ask when submitting questions to candidates, we keep this focus on municipal issues. At this point, I'd like to introduce Jean Rabineau, our league moderator for tonight. Jean is the Connecticut League of Women Voters Director of Outreach and past president of the League of Women Voters of the Bridgeport area. Jean, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, let's get started.
Okay, thank you all very much. I have been asked to do a couple of things. Before we talk about the format for the debate tonight, I have been asked to read all the names that are going to be on the ballot. The candidates for First Selectman are Jamie Stevenson and Christian No. They will be on stage at approximately 8 o'clock. For the Board of Selectmen, who will be the first ones up, Sarah Newman, David Martin, Krista Sheehan McNamara, and Kip Coons. Town Clerk Karen Diller is running unopposed. Town Treasurer Joan Hendrickson is running unopposed. Tax Collector Kathleen Larkins is running unopposed. Candidates for Board of Finance, who will be here at approximately 8:30, Daniel Baumgartner and Taylor Carter. James Palin is a candidate but is unfortunately unable to be here tonight. Board of Education candidates who will be here about 8:55, Tara Achman, John Cini, and Jill McCammon. Board of Assessment Appeals, Richard Dolcetti is running unopposed. Planning and Zoning Commission, the candidates will be up here about 8:15, George Riley, Kara Gately, Lawrence Warble. Constables running unopposed, Alan Hyatt and Louis Calastro. Representative Town Meeting. District 1, there are 11 candidates for the 11 seats. Louisa Brakeman, Patricia Baumgartner, Curtis Butler, Patrick Keene, Colin Kelly, Derek Lublin, Karen McNichol, Bradley Patelli, Lois Schneider, Jennifer Schwartz, and Bert von Stuhlnagel. For District 2, there are 6 candidates running for the 8 seats. William Cusack, Marie Handler, Suzanne Handler, Monica McNally, Iris Mix, and Stacy T.A. For District 3, there are 11 candidates running for 10 seats. Francisco Cardona, Adele Conniff, Holly Giordano, Eric Golis, Catherine Kitson-Haley, Elizabeth Lane, Carolina McGoey, Sue Ellen Mitchell, Thomas Moore, Seth Morton, Jennifer Woodbury. For District 4, there are 9 candidates for 7 seats. Martha Banks, James Cameron, Christine Castles, Werner Domitner, Frank Kemp, Joseph Maselli, Andrew Miller, Margaret Raig, and Sandra Savage. For District 5, there are 8 candidates running for the 10 seats: Carolyn Golden Bain, Terrence Duffy, Kenneth Fiveson, Jennifer Muller, Sarah Palin, James Patrick, Ann Reed, and William Smith. For District 6, there are 10 candidates for the 11 seats: Barry Baldwin, Amy Chiklis, Virginia Gijon Camano, Elizabeth Lucas, Martha Carolyn Luz, Emily McDermott, Peter Orfanos, Shannon Silsby, William Van Loan, and Teresa Vogt. Those are the candidates who will be appearing on your ballot. At this point, I would like to go over the rules for tonight's debate. The debate is what's known as a cumulative format. Each candidate who's up here will get a 1-minute opening and a 1-minute closing. In between that, the candidates will have a total of a certain number of minutes for each office, so that the candidates for Board of Selectmen, after their opening statement, get 5 minutes each. They can take as long or as little time to answer each question as they want, but when they get to 4 minutes and 30 seconds, a warning 30-second sign will go up. At 4:45, a 15-second warning will go up, and at 5 minutes, stop. All right? Again, with the openings and closings, warnings at 30 and 15 seconds. There will be slightly longer or shorter periods for the other candidates, depending on how many are running and how much time we have for them up here. The candidates drew for the order in which they would appear. The audience is entitled, as you heard, to ask questions. And I should say, as a matter of record, that if a candidate feels that a question is unfair, he or she is entitled to use part of their time to explain to you why it is. I will ask what's sent up here. At this point, I would like the candidates for Board of Selectmen to please come on stage. Okay, thank you very much. At this time, timers, are you ready? All right. Will the timer for Ms. Newman please raise her hand? All right, for Ms. McNamara? For Mr. Coons, raise hand.
I'm sorry, could you repeat, McNamara?
All right. For Ms. McNamara, who's timing? All right.
Okay.
Thank you. For Mr. Coons? All right. For Mr. Martin? Okay, thank you all very much. Because of the order of draw, the opening statements start with Ms. Newman.
Hello, my name is Sarah Newman, and I'm running for the Board of Selectmen. First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for holding this event. Having attended this evening in years past, I appreciate their diligent work to give the voters of Darien more information on each candidate in our elections. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about myself. I have lived in Darien for 15 years with my husband and 2 daughters. I'm a member of the RTM in District 4. I've served as co-chair at both the Hinley and DHS, as well as various positions at MMS and CDSP. I'm a past president of the Junior League of Stamford Norwalk, headquartered here in Darien. Through these and other volunteer positions in town, I have learned that communication is the key to success. I promise to listen to our residents and take their feedback into consideration as I vote on the board. In Darien, I feel strongly that we need to promote a collaborative, fact-driven, transparent decision-making process, incorporating ideas and feedback from citizens. In addition, I think it makes sense for us to create a master plan for Darien's growth, from business and residential developments to our parks and recreation. I look forward to working with all residents, commissions, and boards in town.
Thank you. Ms. McNamara.
Good evening. I'm Krista McNamara, and I'd like to begin by thanking the League of Women Voters for all their work in putting on this evening's event. Madam Moderator, and to those of you here in the audience and tuning in at home on Channel 79, thank you for your engagement and interest in these elections. A little bit about me. I grew up in Rye, New York, and graduated from Holy Cross College with a master's degree from Manhattanville. My professional career was largely spent working for Michael Bloomberg, for Bloomberg LP, first in the news division and then in the sales for the financial analytical software. My husband and I, John and I, moved to Darien in 2002. We have 3 children, a daughter who's a sophomore in high school, and twin boys who are in 7th grade. During my time in Darien, I've been very involved in numerous nonprofits, which are so integral to the fabric of our community and our neighboring communities. My entry into town government, though, began in 2007 when I was elected to the RTM, where I served for 6 years. Then in 2013, I was elected to the Darien Board of Education, where I served 2 terms for a total of 6 years. I am now honored to be joining the Board of Selectmen, working with my colleagues here on the stage, and I look forward to tonight's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coons.
Good evening. Here are some observations after 4 years as a selectman.
You'll have to pull the microphone closer, sir.
Can you hear it now, Jim?
That's better.
All right.
Thank you.
Came over to tell me.
Good evening. Here are some observations after 4 years as a selectman. Number one, almost all town employees are smart, hardworking, and loyal. In other words, the taxpayer is being very well served. It starts with the leadership from the first selectman, the superintendent, and the department heads. Second, Darien's governance is probably one of the most, if not the most, transparent in the state. Think of Channel 79 with Vimeo, public meetings of all boards and commissions. We adhere to process, sometimes to the point of pain, but doing so ensures fairness and accountability. We are blessed with many volunteers, wide range of expertise, who devote countless hours to make Darien a better place. The Ox Ridge Building Committee, which I co-chair, is a good example of that. But we need to do a better job of coordinating all of our efforts and eliminate silos of influence and control. More later.
Okay. Mr. Martin.
Hi, I'm David Martin, and I'm running for the Board of Selectmen. My wife, Ann, and I have lived in town for 20 years, and we raised our son, Matt, here. I'm retired from J.P. Morgan Asset Management, where I spent a 30-year career as an investment analyst. For the last 3 years, I've served on the RTM. I've served on the Finance and Budget Committee of the RTM, and many of you know that F&B every year does a deep dive into the budgets for every department in the town, as well as the Board of Ed. And I think that that's given me a reasonably good understanding about town government and the issues that are facing our town. Going forward, we need to maintain our focus on fiscal discipline to minimize taxes while still making the necessary investments to improve our schools, support our local businesses, and enhance the quality of life we enjoy.
Okay, thank you all. First question, we'll start with Ms. McNamara. Are you in favor of the Pear Tree Point Beach Plan, which includes a 2-story structure, and how do you educate yourself on such controversial issues?
Okay, just confirming you'd like me to start the first
Yes.
question? Okay.
And it'll keep going around. Everybody goes first.
Okay. How did I know that question would come up? The Pear Tree Point, the only thing I care about with the Pear Tree Point project is that it's following the process, which I believe it is. This project has been started since, 2007 originally. It has been a long time in the works. The goal of the Pear Tree Improvement Project here is to enhance the recreational facilities at the park while preserving the natural beauty of the beach. A plan for gathering people in the community to meet and enjoy the park year-round. I want to ensure that the decisions made by the building committee, as it moves then from the building committee to zoning board of appeals, to the board of selectmen, to the board of finance, and then finally the RTM, decisions are based in facts, taking in the opinions and feedback from the community, and thinking of the community in the future. So I support the process, and I believe that's what they're following. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coons?
Well, just like Krista, I'm going to say I support process. And the process is such that my opinion at this point is not relevant because the Board of Selectmen has yet to have the project come back to us for our view and look-see. It's in the schematic design phase. When that's done, it will go back to us. It will go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, Architecture Review Board, eventually Board of Finance, and the RTM. There are plenty of times for people to voice their opinions. This is not one of them from the Board of Selectmen to express an opinion until facts come back to us. I express the same point of view that Krista has mentioned, that we hope all decisions are made on a good factual basis. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Martin.
Going to be slightly repetitive here. We do have a democratic process in our town. We have a Park and Rec Commission that is assigned the responsibility of managing our parks and developing them going forward. They've established a building committee to look at this project, and they're going to work together with the Park and Rec Department to determine what they believe is the right project for Darien and the best project to meet the needs of the citizens of Darien. It's at that point that it will come to the Board of Selectmen for approval and review. And obviously, we're going to want to understand all of the aspects of the plan, exactly how they fit into the grand design, what other options were considered and why they were subsequently rejected in favor of the current plan. As the numbers guy, you're going to obviously dig into the total cost of the project, the cost of each element, including the cost of maintenance for the plan. I want to be cautious here because pear tree is a rare asset in our town, and it sits in an environmentally sensitive area. So I'm going to be very interested in knowing what we are doing to preserve the beach in a time of rising tides. Because we know that tides are going to rise, and I want to make sure that we preserve the asset as best we can. I'm going to want to explore what's being done to mitigate the periodic flooding that occurs at the beach, and if there's anything else that we should be doing at the beach. Last but not least, I believe my role on the Board of Selectmen is as a representative of the citizens of the town. And I'm going to want to see some evidence that the citizens of the town support the project that's being proposed.
Okay, Ms. Newman?
I believe, like all the others have said, that there is a process in our town, and I do support that process. One of the things I do believe is that we have an incredibly intelligent community, and one of the things that maybe we could be doing in large projects such as this is having something like a town hall where we're able to present more information about these kind of plans, these large plans. They seem to be eliciting this negative feedback earlier so that everyone can understand why we're choosing the different options and why this plan was chosen over another, because I think that would allow the residents to understand our choices. Having said that, it will come to the Board of Selectmen, it will go through all the approvals process with planning and zoning, it will go to the RTM, and those are the points at which those questions will be asked, and the votes.
Okay. Is there anybody who wants to say anything further on pear tree?
No.
Okay. Next question goes to Mr. Coons first. The next couple of questions will be about money, by the way. It is,
Money.
if elected, what will you do to curb the town's spending?
What would I do to curb the town spending? Wonderful. Well, since I'm on a committee that just asked for $63 million to build a school, that's pretty hard to do. But seriously, obviously what we're trying to do is make sure that all of the things that we provide to the town are necessary. Now, are there some frills in the budget that we have, at least from the town side? Of course there are. There are enhancements to the quality of life in Darien. If the state continues to take money from us or force mandates on us which are unfunded, we're going to have to seriously look at some of the nicer things that we do for the citizens of Darien. We also have a group of people, as I mentioned, the employees of this town, who are working very hard to find ways to be more efficient in everything that they do. We're using all kinds of computers, we're using all kinds of forward thinking and management processes. But frankly, if we're going to face big cuts or big impositions of funding to the state, we're going to have to find some major programs that we're going to have to seriously reconsider. Thank you.
Ms. Martin?
First and foremost, I am hoping that we can take a close look at the budget process. The town has had a surplus in each of the last 2 years, and the surplus this year excluding the parts that were returned from the Board of Ed and the one-time project that was done by the F&B committee, was close to $2 million. So having a surplus is good if the surplus is small, because it means that you budgeted conservatively and you lived within your budget. But if you have a large surplus, it sort of implies that we overtax the residents during the current calendar year. And, maybe that we just got lucky in the past couple of years and it's fine. There are no obvious places where we've been overly conservative. But I think that's something that we can take a look at and maybe see if we can tighten that up a little bit. We've already started this process in town. There are ways that we're using shared services. We have a shared technology officer with the schools at this point in time, and that has clearly saved us a bunch of money. But maybe there's some other ways to look at shared services. And the easy one that comes to my mind is thinking about Public Works, Park and Rec, and the Board of Ed maintenance crews. I believe that there's some coordination in terms of how they work together, but I'm not familiar with the details. I'm wondering if there are some opportunities to improve the level of coordination and potentially find some savings there. And last but not least, I know last time that this debate occurred, there was some talk about IT and maybe doing a strategic IT review and IT inventory. I'm not 100% sure if that was done, but in this day and age where technology drives all of our lives, finding ways to utilize technology to operate smarter and more efficiently, I think makes a lot of sense, and I hope we can spend some time, energy, and effort looking into that.
Ms. Newman.
So I believe our boards in our town are experienced and intelligent, and that they have worked very hard every year to not create a budget that has extra, that there's no frills. But I do believe that we need to be paying attention to what's going on in the state level to determine how it's going to be affecting us. What I would like us to pay attention to are some of the costs that might be associated with some of the projects that are going on in town. We have some great, fantastic new developments. A very wise person once said in the last debate, "Don't be afraid of progress." And I happen to think that's true. But I want to make sure that we are paying attention to things in our infrastructure, whether it's the resulting additions to our education system, whether it's the looking at the flooding issues that we have, all the development in the Heights area. I want to make sure that our spending are known quantities, that we don't have surprises. I think that's very important for our planning purposes.
Okay, Ms. McNamara.
Thank you. Having served on the Board of Ed for 6 years, I am certainly familiar with doing budgets. The Board of Ed budget actually is substantially larger than the town budget. But in that process over 6 years, I've learned to make sure to ask the hard questions as to the reason, and is this the best way and the most efficient way to do the work that we need to continue to do on behalf of the residents of Darien. We need to work smart, we need to work efficiently, and we need to look at opportunities where we can find savings. I look forward to taking my experience on the Board of Education and bringing that over to the Board of Selectmen to find, are there opportunities that were referenced already of shared services, maintenance, finance. We do see it in some of our neighboring communities, Wilton, for example. I look forward to looking into that more to see if it fits, if it's right for Darien, and then we will implement it. Thank you.
Okay, anything further on this? Next question is also about budget and taxes.
Wait,
yes,
we
sir.
have
One, go ahead.
I would just like to say, David and I are both numbers guys. A $2 million surplus on a $140 million budget isn't that much, but the fact of the matter is it's a surplus, and it's going to be used to pay down debt, saving on interest.
Can I just clarify
Yes, sir.
very quickly? The aggregate surplus was $2.7 million. Roughly 400 of that was money that was basically resolved from dormant accounts that the Finance and Budget Committee worked with the Board of Finance on. Roughly 350, if I remember correctly, is the amount of the surplus that was returned by the Board of Ed, and the balance was found by the town. So it was close to $2 million, just shy of $2 million at the town level. The town budget itself is only $30 million. It's not $140 million. The education budget is the big portion of that amount.
All right. Next question goes to Mr. Martin first. How will you deal with the interests of Darien's constituents, as home taxes will ultimately need to increase while home values continue to decline?
That's a really hard question because the interest of the constituents is obviously in preserving the quality of life that we have here in town, preserving the services that we have in town, and also trying to minimize their taxes in a situation in which the value of their home is declining. And I guess the best way that I can say that is to manage our budgeting process as closely as we possibly can and still maintain the service.
Okay, Ms. Newman?
Can you repeat the question? Make sure I'm
Yes.
answering correctly.
How will you deal with the interests of Darien's constituents as home taxes will ultimately need to increase while home values continue to decline?
Thank you. So I think what's important is to be very carefully looking at our spending, but also be very carefully looking at how we conduct our daily lives. We want to continue to support our excellent school system. It is the jewel of our town. It's why so many move here, and we want to make sure that we continue to support that. That will help to maintain home values when our school systems remain strong. We'd like to maintain our strong financial standing while weathering concerns at the state level. And it's very important. We need to be financially conservative and be looking and making sure that our bond rating and everything is great here. But we do need to keep our residents happy and healthy and safe. We can keep watch all of our developments, the business and residential, to keep our small town appeal and retain our residents. We don't want people to move after their children leave the school system. How do we measure that? If the home values are retaining, are our residents happy with our efforts? Are we hearing concerns at the boards and the commissions and the RTM? We need to be very carefully speaking and making sure that we're taking resident feedback into account. It's important to be collaborative and to be transparent and to make sure our residents feel that they're part of the process.
Ms. McNamara?
Can you repeat the question one more time? Sorry.
Yes. How will you deal with the interests of Darien's constituents as home taxes will ultimately need to increase while home values continue to decline?
I think if the key to that question is dealing with constituents, I mean, it's very similar from the work that I had worked with on the Board of Ed, because we're working with all students. We have different levels of students and their abilities, their needs. So I compare it to how I'll be transferring that skill over to the community. We have a wide range of population and their needs. I think communication is going to be key. We need to make sure that we're getting out to our residents, whether we're utilizing the resources of the RTM in the district to make sure we're hearing what the population, our constituents need and want, that we're responding, that we're making sure our decisions are reflective of the needs of our community, and that we're making smart, sound financial decisions. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Coons?
I think one of the things you've kind of forgotten in this discussion is the fact that we have three major developments going on in this town. They are going to add appreciably to the tax base. Hopefully, and I say hopefully with crossed fingers, that the net increase in their taxes will more than offset with the increased school enrollment. These are major, major projects which we haven't seen the likes of in many, many years. And I'm hoping that that increase in tax base, which we've carefully nurtured, will help ameliorate somewhat the problem that we're facing. We can't solve the state's problem here in Darien, however.
Okay. Anything further on that? All right. Next question, we'll go back to Ms. Newman first. The town's threshold for elderly tax relief is $52,200. This is a problem for those of us who are slightly over the threshold. Question is, should our elderly tax relief program be reviewed?
That is a fantastic question, and I would imagine that it could be looked at again. I will tell you that I don't have enough information, and I have not looked at this particular issue before, and I would love to look at it more. But I think in any way, we should always be looking at what our residents want and making sure that what we have in our policies fit our residents' needs.
Okay. Ms. McNamara?
I must say, I don't know the last time this threshold was set or established or investigated, so I would certainly ask that it is updated and reflective of our current population, and I would work with our Board of Finance to see if this is still an appropriate level. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Coons.
I would agree with what Krista just said completely.
Mr. Martin?
The only thing that I would add is that we need to find ways to make it more affordable for the elderly to stay in our community, and also, quite frankly, to find ways to get our college kids to come back when they're done with school.
All right. I think there's going to be time for at least one more question before we go to closing statements. This one starts with Ms. McNamara. What are your top 3 priorities if you're elected for the Board of Selectmen?
Okay, can we just confirm our time limit?
Yes.
Please, thank you.
Old timers, please hold up your signs for the candidates, please. This is a lapsed time, not the time is up sign. I want it is up?
This is our lapse time? Okay, thank you.
Okay. The one whose time is up is which candidate? All right. Is Mr. Martin. So Mr. Martin is done. Okay. Fair enough. All right. For those of you who are not Mr. Martin, what are your top 3 priorities during your term on the Board of Selectmen, if elected? Okay. Starting with Ms. McNamara.
Yes. Top 3 priorities. I think not in any particular order, but as Kip mentioned before, the development that's coming into Darien, the Palmer development and Federated over in Norotan Heights, and the work of David Genovese in town, and how that is really going to change the landscape of how we shop, how we live here in Darien. We need to make sure that that new building and infrastructure works into the fabric of our community. So I think that is an exciting priority, and I look forward to. The second priority is less exciting, is our relationship with Hartford. It is what it is. There's not much we can control there, but I do want to make sure that we are reaching our leadership in Hartford so that they understand that I think we're working pretty well here in Darien, and to stop putting down mandates of regionalization, for example, in the school system, but to work with communities like Darien and to help us take away the impediments so we can make sound, thoughtful, and mutually beneficial decisions with our neighboring communities in order to work smarter and more efficiently. And the third priority is continue to invest in our schools. I think, as was mentioned by Sarah too, schools are our crown jewel, and we have to continue to support them. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Coons.
Fiscal restraint and responsibility, transparency in our government, continuing what we've done and to be way out in front of the curve. And finally, I have a special one, which is to build a new school as low cost as possible, but have the best school we can possibly have in this town.
Okay, Ms. Newman.
So in a particular order, I would love to see a master plan for our town's growth, whether it's residential or business or parks and rec. I want to make sure that what we're doing is smart and thoughtful and not reactive. I would like us to be more proactive with our planning. I'd like to retain our position as one of the most desired communities to live in. I want to retain our home values. I want to make sure that what we're doing is making our residents feel happy and that they want to stay here, and increase that civic engagement with those residents. Lastly, I would love to look at our town roads and sidewalks. I've heard quite a bit of feedback about the concern about the condition about some of them, and I know that we're working on some, and I would like to see if we can do any more.
All right, thank you all. All right, I think we can wedge in one more. This one will start with Mr. Coons, and is, do you think the town needs more rental space?
More what space?
Rental.
Rental space.
Yes. Not home ownership, home rental.
Let the market decide that. I don't know why a Board of Selectmen member would try to predict that or make that a good idea. The market will speak best, and that's my philosophy anyway. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Newman.
So I'm not sure, is the question about home rentals or business rentals?
It didn't say.
Didn't say. So in any community, you should have some balance, but as Mr. Kuhn said, I'm not sure that the Board of Selectmen will be responsible for the planning and the developments for those.
Okay, Ms. McNamara?
I have to agree. I think that's left to the market, and whether it's businesses or individuals, I don't think that's the place of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. I'm going to do something which is not actually on the cards, but I'm going to ask a question which I want an answer to be yes, no, I don't know, or pass. All right? And then we're going to get to closing statements. And I will start with Mr. Martin on this because it's a one-word answer. Do you agree that...
Don't take that, David.
All right. Do you agree that public comment should be allowed at all public meetings, including commissions?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Ms. McNamara?
Absolutely.
And Mr. Coons?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. At this point, we get to the closing statements. By luck of the draw, they will start back with Ms. Newman. 1 minute each, please. Timers.
In closing, I would just like to thank again the League of Women Voters in Darien for holding this event. I'm excited about the opportunity to collaborate with the different boards and commissions in our town. I absolutely look forward to working with our residents in making sure that we have a transparent and collaborative decision-making process. I appreciate your support, and I look forward to working with you.
Ms. McNamara?
Darien Together. That is the team of Jamie, Kip, and myself. And as I think of this message, it is more important now than it's been in quite a while. Darien Together means that Darien town bodies and elected officials need to come together in a spirit of cooperation, transparency, and support. So we are working together on behalf of our residents who elected us to office and to ensure the most effective governance for our community. Darien Together means that Darien needs to come together to urge our leadership in Hartford to support voluntary, well-researched consolidation of services that are mutually beneficial to all parties and that reflect the needs and desires of its constituents. Darien Together means that Darien elected officials need to work with the community to understand its needs and wants in order to make decisions on investments and infrastructure that reflect the needs of the majority of our residents, but also respectful of the future growth of our community. I believe my experiences in town government on both the Board of Education and the RTM make me well suited to address these areas, and I ask for your support on November 5th.
Thank you. Mr. Coons?
Well, here's part two of some more observations. The grabbing hands of Hartford, as coined by Alex Davidson of the RTC, is an apt description of the external threat that has and continues to loom over Darien. The hands grab for money, think statewide vehicle tax, contributions to the teachers' pension fund, and increases in unfunded mandates. They also grab for control over our self-governance, think school regionalization, and attempts to consolidate health departments throughout the state. We must continue to challenge these initiatives by the Progressive Caucus in Hartford. Voting, even in this uncontested election, sends a clear message that you care and you are watching closely all of their activities and proposals. Please vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin?
I look forward to working with the Darien community and all elected and appointed town officials in a collaborative and transparent manner to make the best decisions for Darien's residents. As I mentioned, we need to maintain our fiscal discipline to minimize the growth in property taxes and still make all of the necessary investments to improve our schools, support our businesses, and to enhance the quality of life we enjoy. I think my 30 years as an analyst will help me bring a fact-driven, logical, and fair-minded approach to this process. Lastly, I will seek to improve the communication with town residents and foster a greater spirit of civic engagement. My name is David Martin, and I ask for your support at the polls on November 5th.
Thank you to all the candidates.
I cut something out. I was afraid I was going to run over.
And now if the candidates for first selectman will please come to the stage.
So we're missing a couple of those questions. I think the rest of them are.
All right. Thanks, guys. Nice job. I'll leave that. Oh, well, that's not bad. Your water? Take it out. Thank you.
Okay, Board of Selectmen questions mostly got used.
Waters?
Yep, here.
And I need the questions for First Selectman. Yes. The ones that I used are numbered to match. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
If you need cards for questions, raise your hand.
Is my timer?
Also, you can email lwvdariandebate@gmail.com.
Good. Write big, because I can't see.
All right. I've been asked to ask the candidates to please speak closely into the mics. Timers, the format for this part of it, again, is 1 minute for an opening statement, 7 minutes total for the candidates, 1 minute closing statement. Who is the timer, or who are the timers for Mr. No? And the timers for Ms. Stevenson? Okay, thank you. That being said, opening statement goes to Mr. No first.
I'm Chris Noam. I'm running again. I read the paper, I drive around town, I see things happening, I see our taxes going up, I see changes in kind of in the wrong direction. I wish the current leadership was more proactive instead of reactive. I think what's happening in Hartford is going to crush most of the state and us. We're supposedly we can afford it, but the reality is we need to be proactive in what Hartford's doing to us, and I just don't see it happening. So I will continue to run.
Okay, Ms. Stevenson.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Good evening, and thanks to the League for hosting tonight's event. Each and every day brings new challenges and opportunities for our town. Darien's success story is 200 years in the making because of town leaders and volunteers who share common values and who work together toward common goals. As your first selectman, I'm Darien's most vocal ambassador locally and at the regional and state policy-making tables. By building trusted relationships, I've been elected by my bipartisan peers to chair our regional planning agency and our municipal insurance company, giving me a very unique platform to advance Darien's interests statewide. I think strategically for ways to deliver quality services more efficiently by exceptional staff and at limited cost. Darien is entering a time of transformation. There's much more we can do together if we row in the same direction, keeping the long-term interest of our town squarely in sight.
I'm afraid
I look
that's
forward to
time.
answering your questions.
All right, that's time. Thank you. Once again, the first question that I got, and this one goes to Ms. Stevenson first, where do you stand on the Pear Tree Point Beach renovation? Do you think the project should go forward, given the outspoken opposition to the structure and its cost?
So I concur with all of the selectmen candidates we heard already. I truly believe the process needs to go forward. The Board of Selectmen unanimously agreed to seat a building committee at the request of the Parks and Rec Commission. That process is really in the beginning phases. I won't be repetitive with what we heard earlier. So I hope that by the time it comes back to the Board of Selectmen, we will have all the necessary information to make a well-informed, fact-based decision on whether it's a project that will be supported by our town residents.
Okay, and Mr. No.
The Pear Tree Point is in its final stages. The people who I speak to are speaking very loudly against it. I hear support for it as well. I personally launched my boat down there, and I know there's times that it's difficult for me to find a spot to park my truck and trailer. And this plan clearly was written by or drawn by someone who has no knowledge of the beach, because that parking lot does fill up frequently. And to lose 45 spaces is insane. I'm not surprised that some of the locals are protective of their space, and they should be, as I am. I don't think the town should be engaged in using our property as a commercial rental for someone else. If this thing is built, it's our property. We paid for it. We'll continue to pay for it. And why would we be pushed out of that space because the town is going to rent it? That doesn't make any sense. The town's not in the business of doing this. I think we need to think about this. The beach is one elderly can go on a winter's day and drive their car up and look at the water. It's therapy. Weed Beach, they planted grasses, and now you have to get out of your car unless you're driving a jacked up F-250 or something, which I don't think the elderly are driving. So it doesn't work. We have to really hire the right people. And if we see a bad plan, we just got to throw it out from the start, or throw out aspects of it. I think there's parts of this plan that are good, but for the most of it, I would throw it out. But unfortunately, it's closer to being done, you'd think.
Could I add one comment, just a point of clarification? I believe the town was gifted the land that Pear Tree Point Beach sits on by a very generous, longtime family in our town.
Okay, anything further, Mr. No?
No, done.
Okay, thank you. Next question goes to Mr. No first. Do you support a 4-day work week at Town Hall? Why or why not?
I absolutely do not support a 4-day work week, and I'm appalled that it's even gotten this far. We have a group of employees here who work really hard and are appreciated for the most part. Some of them are not. I know they have to punch a time clock, and that's really not fair. I think our employees, if they had to make a phone call to call their kid for a doctor's appointment and it took 5 minutes, that they would give us back the 5 minutes. We have people who run businesses and need the town hall open 5 days a week. If you've ever tried to sell a house and you have a closing, you're scrambling to get building permits and things signed off. And if you don't get it done by Thursday, it's going to be 4 more days before you're going to close on that house. So it shouldn't have even been considered at all. And I know the town employees have already voted on it, and there's some alarming things. It's a 4-day work week. Currently, they have it's 2 weeks vacation, 2 weeks sick. And in the negotiations right now, they are going to get 10 days sick, 10 days vacation, even though they work a 4-day week. The union hasn't looked at it yet, and they're going to supposedly work an 8 3/4 hour day. The unions are going to demand overtime for over 8 hours. And then, so what are we going to do? The town employees already work a 35-hour work week. And so I think in the final hour, it's going to drop to 32. The mail is delivered 6 days a week, 5 days a week, 7 days a week now. The town hall needs to be open 7 days. And this thing has come too far already, and you got to kill it. But it's been taken off the table until after the election, and that's just what they did with the shuttle. They picked it up after and pushed it through, and I'm afraid that's what's going to happen with this too.
Ms. Stevenson?
Sure. I'm astounded at the depth of knowledge Mr. No claims to have on this particular topic. What I can share with you is that the town administrators made inquiry with our departments to see if there's a flexible schedule opportunity that would actually benefit our town residents. We know that a lot of people work long hours. They work in New York City. It's difficult for them to come back and take care of their town business. During the typical 8:30 to 4:30 town hall day. So any enhancements that we may or may not make to the town hall schedule would have as its highest priority services to our town residents. Thank you.
Okay, anything further on that? All right, next one goes to Ms. Stevenson first. How will you address the walkability and safety of our community?
Oh, those are two big and largely separate questions. First, I'd like to talk about safety in our community. Government has certain primary roles. We have tremendous expectations on the things we think that government should provide to us, and we're very blessed here in Darien that we have generous taxpayers that fund a significant amount of services that are not really fundamental, but the fundamental roles of government are public health and safety and the education of our children. So in regard to safety, we make sure that we have the very best in our law enforcement personnel. We fully fund the 3 volunteer fire departments that we have. We're very, very lucky that we have volunteer fire service here and not paid fire. High on my priority list is to work very collaboratively with the new superintendent and the Board of Education on school security. I know that that is top of mind for all parents in Darien. And we have a great opportunity with the new Oxridge Elementary School to build into that facility best practice school security measures along with security infrastructure. In regards to walkability and pedestrian safety, we have continued to make improvements on adding new sidewalks, again, prioritizing walking student safety to our schools. That needs to be the priority. And we are engaging in a bicycle plan that will build safe bike routes between our town and New Canaan, and we're also looking at a regional bike plan. So I'll leave you with the idea that public safety, which includes walkability and bicycling and scootering and the like, is probably the most primary role for government.
Okay. Mr. No.
We've got the safest community around. We're really lucky. I think that's why we live here. That's why our property values are trying to stay up. I think, there's problems we've had. There was a jogger who was raped. My girlfriend was raped. Another girlfriend of mine was raped. So rape happens in this town. It's, I don't want to go into it here, but it'd be surprising if you knew. But, you have to be careful. I think all of us have to be careful about where we are at all times. And it's not, that we are immune to this. We're surrounded. We go to New York City. It's in the news every day. Someone's raped, someone's murdered. I think so. We're very aware. But as a community, Darien residents are extremely lucky, and we're proud to live here.
All right. Again, I'm going to ask a one-word answer for this, and it's the same question. It starts with Mr. No. Do you agree that public comment should be allowed at all public meetings, including commissions? Yes or no?
Who was that guy that used to come in all the time? Oh, like crazy, his wife died. Yeah. Oh, God, what was his name? Yes, Walter. Walter? Yeah, Walter. Yeah. Absolutely. Guys like Walter, God, they have to come.
Okay, Ms. Stevenson.
100% yes.
Okay. Thank you both. At this point, I'm afraid we are ready to go to closing statements. Timers 1 minute each. This will start with Ms. Stevenson first.
Great. Thank you very much. For the past 10 years, it's been truly an honor serving our town on the selectmen team. Along with life's expected ups and downs, during my tenure on the Board of Selectmen, you probably don't know that both my parents and my mother-in-law passed away. John and I celebrated 3 college graduations, 2 weddings, and the birth of a grandchild. And yes, I did bring a picture, because I knew you'd want to see her. She's adorable. All the while, my family stood firmly behind my unwavering commitment to putting our town first. I want to thank my husband, John, who's back here, and my family for their sacrifices and support. Gone are the days when your first selectman can serve part-time. The job has changed significantly as state government searches for local solutions to state problems. My experience, ability to think strategically, my commitment to good governance and fair process, my large network of trusted relationships, and mindfulness of the proper role of government sets me apart from my opponent. I respectfully ask for your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. No.
I continue to run again. I wish I saw things that my opponent sees in herself. We have some real problems here. We're a wonderful town, but we're in a bankrupt state. And we have to do many things to change the way we do business so that we're not victimized by our state. I don't see that happening here. At the same time, we have many infrastructure things to maintain, which is that old sewer line that I always bring up. But we have a wonderful life here, and it's going to remain. I wish I could do like a 30-day test as first selectman just to see what I would get done. But it's a 2-year term. She's been here for 10 already. It's really time to let someone else step in and do some different work. Thank you.
Thank you both. All right. Thank you. If we could have the candidates for planning and zoning, please. Okay, thank you, and you've got the others. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, good. These are all good. We're never going to have time. She's got them. She's got them. At least I believe she's got them. You got the first selectment questions, right? Yes. Oh, water for candidates, please. Yes.
Where are these going in front? Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Timers, this is going to be, again, a very short segment. Each candidate gets a 1-minute opening, 3 minutes only for answers, and a 1-minute close. And by luck of the draw, the first opening statement goes to Mr. Warble.
Oh, great. Really? Hello, thank you very much. I'm Larry Warble, and this is very loud. I want to thank you for hosting this event tonight, and I'd really like to thank everyone who made the effort to come out tonight to see this event. And those that are tuning in on Channel 79. One of the things we've been talking about is how important local elections are and people being really engaged and involved in our community. And so the fact that you all made it out tonight for this event, I think, speaks a lot for you. That's just absolutely wonderful. Just introduce myself a little bit. I've been in Darien for almost 18 years now. I moved here with my wife. We raised 3 wonderful children. Darien has been just fantastic to us. 2 of them have I've graduated from the high school and are in college. I'm home with my daughter now, and sadly for me, I was widowed several years ago, and I've basically been home alone with my children. Now with 2 off at college, I've got enough time on my hand that I can give back to this community, volunteer, become involved.
Sir, that is time, I'm afraid.
All right, well, thank you.
All right, Ms. Gately.
Good evening. All right, thank you first. Good evening. My name is Kara Gately, and I am honored.
Please, closer to the mic.
I'm not loud enough. Those who know me, that's not true.
That's
but
thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kara Gately, and I am honored to be here among a great group of candidates and dedicated public servants. I thank you all for your service and dedication to our town. I also want to thank the League of Women Voters and our moderator tonight for their tireless work that they do to make sure that voters are aware of issues, especially in off-election years and years when there's uncontested elections. And yes. My husband Patrick and I moved to Darien 13 years ago, and we have 3 boys in Darien public schools. We did not grow up in Darien, but we chose Darien. We chose Darien to raise our family, and we don't regret a second of it. We both are dedicated to making this town a high-performing, great hometown with great schools, beautiful beaches and parks, and a vibrant community and a thriving downtown.
Okay, thank you. That is time. Mr. Riley.
Thank you and good evening. I appreciate the efforts of the Darien League of Women Voters in bringing all the candidates together, and I appreciate the presence of so many interested voters here and those who are watching on Channel 79 tonight. I want to continue to be a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission because my legal training and the insight I've gained living here give me a good perspective from which to fairly represent all Darienites in deliberations on issues concerning use, safety, size, neighborhoods, sustaining resources, traffic, and enhancing commerce, among others. I'm a native of Darien, married a Darienite, and raised our 3 boys here in Darien. I've come to know the town very well. In the past, I've served on the Charter Revision Commission, the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Education, and I chaired the Police Headquarters Building Committee, and I am continuing to practice law here in town with the Rucci Law Group, and I thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you all three. First question starts with Ms. Gately. The moratorium concerning affordable housing expires next year. How will this impact the town?
I believe the town will have to continue the work it's done in the past, which is to encourage and work towards private and public development and redevelopment to ensure that there's a diverse housing stock for all different constituencies and to make sure that lower income residents can move to this town and raise their families here, but also that seniors can remain in town after their families have left, their children may have left or moved out of their homes, and that they're on a fixed income. And I think we set the example in the state by being one of the first towns to achieve a moratorium, and that was done by hard work and innovative thinking by planning and zoning members in this town already. And I think to continue to have innovative, creative thought processing, looking at different zoning methodologies that can be applied, perhaps thinking about whether zoning regulations could be rewritten or revised in light to come up with solutions so that there can be a diverse housing stock for the town.
Okay, Mr. Riley?
I certainly agree that we need a mix of housing stock in this town. I certainly want to keep as much local control over that as we can. Obviously, the statute of 8-30G has been implicated in the past and has gotten us some results that I don't think we've been entirely pleased with. So I hope that the zoning board, along with the staff of zoning and all the developers who are thinking about projects here, will think creatively about how we can accomplish a mix of both affordable housing and sufficient housing at market rates that will make it viable. That is what I hope we can do in the future.
Okay, and Mr. Warble.
Yeah, thank you. I think I would agree with everything that's been said so far. I mean, this is part of the heavy lifting that we're going to have to be doing going forward to help Darien maintain local control in a wide range of areas, but certainly our housing stock, and it is important that we do have a diversity of the housing stock that represents the diversity of the type of people we would like to have live in the community along with us. So hopefully we can have some common sense solutions and just maintain a lot of openness and transparency about what we're doing and what our process is.
Okay. Thank you all. Next question will go to Mr. Riley first. More development in town means more residents and possibly more employees. What do you plan to do about the increased traffic that at times is already heavy?
It's a good question. I wish we had greater degree of control over the traffic than we do, but traffic studies are required in most of the applications that are made to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So we're going to look closely at those studies. I know that there are some very reliable engineers who work on those studies, and we're going to rely on them to guide us in this. I am concerned about traffic, especially on the Post Road, especially as the Corbin District is developed. We've got large facilities at both ends of the Post Road from the exit 11 down to exit 13 with the new affordable or senior-related housing and the meat house and all those other facilities. I think traffic is something we have to watch very carefully, and that will have to be done in the Heights as well. But the Zoning Commission has the authority to do that through the application process, and we intend to do it.
All right. Mr. Warble.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. I think when it comes to questions of traffic, which is obviously just brutal everywhere we go, going through a data-driven process of finding solutions that can actually be implemented. I mean, there's just this is a very densely populated part of the world. I mean, it just is, and it's going to be really hard to find solutions that can really impact us well. But if we can get the right data, we can get the right kind of expertise in the area, then certainly I'm willing to act on that and try to put in some common sense solutions that can help alleviate the traffic issues we have.
Ms. Gately.
I certainly agree with my co-P&Z candidates, and want to point out that planning and zoning both has a zoning component, but it has planning responsibilities, and the planning responsibilities entail the board to consider legislative changes and looking broadly at things that can be done in the traffic area. So looking at whether there are ways to reconnect Old Kings Highway to alleviate traffic, create alternate traffic routes, especially as the Post Road becomes more congested with, denser area, residential zoning districts, and with increased redevelopment areas. So I think that's what we need to look at. We need to remember that it's not just enforcing the current zoning, but also looking long-term in the planning and legislative responsibilities and powers that the board has.
Okay, anything further on this? All right, thank you. I hate to do this, but I think we're getting to the point where we have to do closing statements. Timers reset to 1 minute each, and by luck of the draw, the close first starts with Mr. Warble.
Well, the timers are noticing I've been very efficient with my time tonight. I'm just going to pick up on where my opening statement was, which was some of the things that motivated me to volunteer for this town. Regionalization last year really caught my eye, really got my attention, and I realized that we as Darien I think the grabbing hands of Hartford is a great analogy, and I think it's an all-hands-on-deck scenario, and since I have the time to volunteer to give back to this community that's been so wonderful to me, I'd like to take that opportunity and do my best to help you and to help our town thrive and succeed in what's going to be a very tough environment. So for that reason, I'm Larry Warble. I'd very much like to ask for your vote and to send a message that Darien voters are engaged and are paying attention to what's going on in our community. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Gately?
Thank you. Similar to George, I also am a trained attorney, and I've practiced in the regulatory area as an enforcement attorney for the Securities and Exchange Commission and in-house at a number of investment banks. I'm well-versed and very comfortable dealing with regulations, interpreting them, and suggesting ways to revise them and reinterpret them as times change. I believe planning and zoning requires both a person who understands regulations but is comfortable looking forward in the planning context and thinking about ways that they can be revised. I love this town. I chose to live here. I think it's a wonderful place to live and raise your children. I think we're at a tipping point and we're at a crossroads. And like everyone else has said, it's about keeping local control, maintaining property values for our residents, ensuring that our residents and our seniors especially can stay here in the town where they loved and raised their children, and that we all can enjoy our beautiful towns, parks, beaches, and our vibrant downtown. I ask for your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Riley.
And thank you. I simply want to say that I will work to maintain the value of your investment and mine in Darien. And I want to maintain this town as a comfortable home and productive place to do business. And I look forward to working with Larry and Kara and the rest of the Planning and Zoning Commission to accomplish that. Thank you.
Thank you all very, very much.
They all still have time left, and we have...
Yes, but we've got like 1 minute before the thing ends. And I'm going to ask that the audience take a 2-minute break, because people, if they don't stand up, are going to die.
Okay.
All right, audience, you have 2 minutes to stand and stretch.
Jim Palin's not here, so we have
Yeah.
flexibility.
Yes. But you're giving them a fair chunk of time here for 5 minutes each.
Well, because we thought
Yeah.
Jim was going to be here, but he's
Gotcha.
not coming.
Uh-huh.
But we want to make sure they get their full.
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Those is our most important.
That's what I thought.
Okay, good.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Water.
We need one more water.
Oh, there's tons of water under there.
No worries.
Yeah, okay, good. Oops. Okay, if the audience will kindly take seats, and if we can have the candidates for Board of Finance.
Oh, you too.
Okay.
I look forward to working together.
I know. I look forward to it as well. I love that my first, real experience of this is a great one.
All right, timers, if you can take your seats and get ready.
I feel very short in this seat.
Give us another 5 minutes.
All right. Will the timers for Ms. Carter raise their hand? And the timers for Mr. Baumgartner? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, luck of the draw. And this one I should say, again, each candidate gets a 1-minute opening, a 1-minute closing, and up to 5 minutes for the questions, assuming that there's time, and we will finish this segment at about 5 minutes to 9. First opening statement, luck of the draw, Ms. Carter.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you to the League for hosting us here this evening, and to all the volunteers who make this happen. My name is Taylor Carter, and I've lived in Darien since 2010. I have 4 children in the Ox Ridge Elementary School, and a saint of a husband who is willing to put them to bed several nights a week so I can be here. I've served on the Representative Town Meetings, Finance and Budget Committee for the past 3 years, and as the Vice Chair of Education for 2 of them. My background is in finance. I studied it along with economics and German at the University of Vermont, and worked in fixed income sales and trading for over 10 years before retiring to stay home with my children. I'm running for the Board of Finance because I truly enjoy participating in the town's budget process and contributing to the analysis that helps keep Darien on solid financial footing. I love this town, and I'm excited to build on the work I have done with the RTM at the Board of Finance, and to work with John Zagrodzky, Dan, Jim Palin, who sadly had to travel tonight, and all the other members of the board who contribute to and continue Darien's tradition of prudent budgeting and fiscal responsibility.
Thank you. Mr. Baumgartner.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, all the candidates here this evening, and to all those in the community participating in this conversation. I recently retired from a 35-year career in banking, including about 2 years in the municipal bond market, helping small communities raise capital. I have bachelor's and master's degrees with a focus in finance. My wife and I have been residents of Darien for over 20 years, with both of our children proud graduates of the Darien public school system. Many in the community know me as an active coach of youth sports, as well as a volunteer for a number of not-for-profits. But most know me simply as Patty's husband. This is an important moment for Darien as we are facing turbulence from Hartford as well as stress on our property values. I believe the Board of Finance has done an outstanding job balancing the need to enhance our town services and maintain excellence in our school system with the desire to minimize any increase in property taxes. But we need to be extra diligent going forward as these pressures do not show any sign of abating. It is my turn to serve the town that has served my family so well, and that is why I'm running for our Board of Finance.
Okay, thank you both. First question goes to Mr. Baumgartner first. From the Board of Finance perspective, how much do you assume Darien will get in investment income when calculating the mill rate?
That's a timely topic. I haven't been on the Board of Finance, but I'm very aware that there's been discourse, private and public. Social media and newspapers have all weighed in. I think the town has managed its finances exceedingly well over the 20 years that I've lived here. I think all the people that work for the town do an outstanding job and are doing their best to keep the town's interests first and foremost. I think prudent budgeting requires that we examine the policies of investing our town's money and making sure that we're doing the best job we can of optimizing the returns on that while maintaining prudence, given it's your money that the town is managing. So I think the town's doing a good job. I think the Board of Finance is examining whether the budgeting can be a little bit closer to the actual results that we're achieving.
Okay, Ms. Carter?
Sherry, can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, certainly. From the Board of Finance perspective, how much do you assume Darien will get in investment income when calculating the mill rate?
I mean, as far as a number is concerned, I think there's a way to calculate that or estimate that, but the role of the treasurer is really to preserve our capital and make sure it's available to us when we need it. Dan said, there's been a lot of talk about this, and we need to look at the policies, look at how we're investing the assets, look at our alternatives. In town, we're allowed to invest in government-only securities, which means the yields are not high. This is not really an investment role so much as it is a preservation of capital role. I think we should look at how we're investing it next year, what the balances are, and make an accurate estimate of what it will be.
All right. Anything further on that? Next question goes to Ms. Carter first. We have 3 large mixed-use developments about to break ground. Do we know the benefits of increased commercial taxes will exceed the potential costs of rising enrollment in schools, traffic, etc.?
I have not looked at this yet, so I can't speak from data that I've reviewed, but certainly it's a question we're going to be confronted with. I think we have to get good estimates of the number of students that will be populating those residences and, efficiencies we can achieve in our school system to absorb them most efficiently. And I think the question was, do we know? I would say I don't know yet, but I plan on working very hard to hit that nail on the head.
All right. Mr. Baumgartner?
We all wish we had a crystal ball, and the revenue that's generated from these projects is derived by rental income, by sales in retail sales, et cetera, and no one can predict exactly what that's going to look like, nor can we predict what the impact on our population will be. But I would say that all 3 of these projects have been exceedingly well vetted and have obtained town approvals that presumably would require a justification of the tumult that the town will go through as these projects are being put in place. So my presumption is that has been demonstrated that, yes, the revenues will exceed the burden on the town. But again, that is all projection, and we will endeavor to watch it closely to make sure that that is indeed the case.
I would just add to that, too, that I don't think the calculation simply should be, would tax revenue exceed the cost of absorbing that many students? I think the value of these developments goes beyond that, and when we think about property values and the quality of life in Darien and who we can attract to live in our town, that will all be enhanced through these developments. So I don't know that you can really just draw a straight line from one number to the next.
Anything further, Mr. Baumgartner?
I would agree with that. There's a subjective quality with respect to some of the things that have been discussed earlier about retaining residents, whether income levels, age levels, et cetera, and these developments should make it easier for us to retain some residents that now feel that there's no place for them here.
Okay, thank you both. Next one goes to Mr. Baumgartner first. The town's threshold for elderly tax relief is $52,200. This is a problem for those of us who are slightly over the threshold. Should the elderly tax relief program be reviewed and revised?
That question came up earlier.
Yeah.
I think it requires studying. I'm not sure when it was last examined. It sounds like it's an issue that should be examined without determining at this point what kind of decision should be made. There is, again, though, the bias is to make it easier for more residents, regardless of income or age, to stay in town.
Okay. Ms. Carter?
I haven't seen this problem before, this number before, but I think it's probably as simple as looking at the criteria that we used last time we set this number and reevaluate what that looks like today. Is it off or is it accurate? That must exist somewhere.
Okay. All right. Next question goes to Ms. Carter first, and we got a couple of variants on it. If the state begins to bill us for a greater share of employee pension costs, do you favor passing 100% of the cost directly to the Darien taxpayers, reducing services so that it's tax neutral, or other?
I mean, obviously, other is the preference. I think we're definitely going to be looking for efficiencies, ways that we can mitigate and reduce the impact to taxpayers and to students. I mean, it's a constant balancing act between the two parties. So, I'm in search of other on a constant basis.
All right, Mr. Baumgartner?
Ditto. Seriously, it's not an either-or question, or it's certainly not an either-or answer. We have to work hard to balance the services that we provide, the excellence in our school systems, with managing our mill rate. That will make it that much harder, but it's already hard. That will just make it that much harder, but that's why we're running for office and asking for your vote to hopefully trust us and the other town officials and boards to do the best we can with that issue.
Okay. Thank you both. The next one goes to Mr. Baumgartner first. What are your top 3 priorities during your term if elected?
We are a Class A community in the tri-state area, have been for decades. When we first moved here, one of the older folks that had been here his whole life said property values never go down in this town. We can't say that to somebody that's coming here now. So it's our challenge is to maintain Darien as a Class A community despite the pressures we have, both coming from the state level and just overall property values generally, which is a bigger issue than just Hartford. It's flight from New York. It's less financial jobs. It's a multifaceted issue. The second priority is to manage growth in services in town, and that's really to balance with managing our tax rate. So we want to continue to grow. We want to continue to offer services that enhance our position as a Class A community, but in balance with managing the mill rate. And finally, it's to do everything we can to preserve our excellent school system.
Okay, Ms. Carter.
Having served on the RTM's Finance and Budget Committee in the role as Vice Chair of Education, I've become very familiar with the education budget. My priority is to get to know the Board of Selectmen's budget as well as I know the education budget. My second priority would be, I guess, within the education budget, continuing my work there and looking at the way we are budgeting for certain items and funding them specifically with regard to school security. And finally, I would be, again, on the search for other solutions because I am confident that Hartford is coming for us for more of our dollars, and we are going to need to be more creative with every passing year. So I'd be looking for new efficiencies.
All right. At this time, I'm going to express moderator's privilege and wrap up this segment a couple of minutes early and go directly to the closing statements. And by luck of the draw here, it would be Ms. Carter first.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank you all for having us tonight. I'm proud to be a member of this community, and I'm excited about the prospect of serving on the Board of Finance. I don't think there's any question that the financial state of our state is worsening and that Hartford's troubles are creeping closer to our doorstep. Despite receiving pennies on every tax dollar we send to Hartford, with every state budget cycle we see new legislation proposed that would have Darien residents contribute more mightily to the state budget crisis. While we might not be able to stop legislation like that from being enacted, we, the members of Darien's boards and commissions, can help ensure that we are efficient and intelligent about the investments we make here. By managing our finances in a fiscally responsible way while remaining vigilant in our monitoring of state initiatives, we will remain as nimble and prepared as we possibly can be. I look forward to serving the town and ask for your vote on November 5th.
Thank you. Mr. Baumgartner.
Acting directly as elected officials of the town, Darien's Board of Finance has responsibility for the town's budget and overall financial policy. This critical function requires the board to actively communicate and interact with other boards, town officials, and members of the community in order to make sure its recommendations are well-informed and well-founded. This requires the board to develop a thorough understanding of the budget set forth by each of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education in order to make sure this balance is being achieved. Ultimately, members of the Board of Finance represent the town's collective interests in this critically important work of how our tax dollars are spent. You have my commitment that my approach will be one of collaboration and partnership with all stakeholders in the community, recognizing that my responsibility is to each of the individuals that call Darien home.
Thank you both very much. And now, last but not least, Board of Education candidates, please.
Are you getting to ask the questions?
Pretty much the only ones that are really askable.
Okay, because we want to give these.
It's extra. I was told that we should give them, we should make sure that they each expend their full 5 minutes. Yeah. These two both were down to like 30 seconds, 20 seconds left.
So we want to make sure we don't cut
yes,
them off.
Right, exactly. Do you want to make it 6 minutes? We've got the time.
Have the time.
All right.
All
right.
Hi. How are you?
All right.
Really fun.
The only one that I didn't even get to ask was the Okay. All right. All right, thank you. This is Board of Ed. And what is Mr. Ms. McCammon.
That sign's kind of funny, right?
Which one?
I think it just says John.
And 3 is Ms. Achman.
John, they're trying to get your attention.
All right. I am told that because there were only 2 candidates on the prior segment of the evening, that we can give you each 6 minutes.
Oh, boy.
Oh, okay. Us. Way to go, Board Ed.
And I've been told not to cut the debate off, even if we're down to like seconds, because they want to use it all up. Okay.
What time are we going home?
Because we're starting shortly after 8:45, we'll still be out of here by the planned time at 9:20, if not sooner.
Please.
At this point, the order of draw is opening statement starts with Mr. Sini, so please go ahead.
Many thanks to the League for hosting tonight's event. I think this is my 3rd rodeo, as I said earlier. just in a different role. I'd like to also thank the Darien Republican Town Committee for its endorsement for this election. Connecticut's general statutes for education lead with the line, local boards of education are not agents of the town, but creatures of the state. The dual agency role of the Board of Education is unique among the town's other elected bodies. On one hand, board members must ensure our school district meets a variety of state education mandates and standards, while on the other hand, just as importantly, members serve at the will of their local electors and must account for their concerns related to education and its related spending. Because of the state's fiscal crisis and the push for school regionalization, it's crucial that the Board of Education finds new ways to do more with limited funding sources in order to maintain the high level of education that we all expect. Based on my career as a financial analyst for, I don't quite have 30 years, but I think I'm on my 26th year, and almost a decade of serving this town as a member of the RTM and a father of 3 boys, and planning and zoning, can't forget that. I'm confident that I'll be a productive member of the town of Darien's Board of Education from the get-go.
Thank you. Ms. McCammon.
Okay. I also would really like to thank the League for this opportunity to talk to our community about why we're running for office. My passion continues to be the Board of Education's role in the creation of lifelong learners of all kinds. A Dartmouth grad with a master's from NYU, I'm a great blend of front lines, educational involvement, and professional experience. Before deciding to stay home with my 4 boys, who attend Darien Public Schools at the ELP, elementary, and middle school level, I worked in management consulting and in the food industry. More recently, I'm a 3-year member of the Board of Education and formerly served as the chair of the Darien High School Building Committee and the Council for Darien School Parents. Today, I believe the board has 2 major priorities. First, with the arrival of a new superintendent, is ensuring this leadership team starts strong and is set up to drive long-term success in academic excellence and healthy student achievement. Second is through better whole board advocacy and meaningful collaboration to keep decision-making for Darien in Darien.
Thank you. Ms. Ockman.
Thank you to the League. It's a pleasure to be back in front of you again for another term on the Board of Education. The last 3 years have been exciting, eye-opening, 3 superintendents, school regionalization, and engaging with school buildings, as Mr. Coons mentioned, and a host of priorities coming to the forefront. I feel that this board is in a unique position with the superintendent as we head out on a strategic plan, and I look forward to working with our full 9-member team to make sure that our belief that schools exist for children and that we are financially responsible continues and can move forward into the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. First question starts with Ms. McCammon. Some believe that the town's Board of Education has become partisan and in the end might affect the best interests of the children. Do you agree with this statement? And if so, how do you plan on bringing the Board of Education to a more centric and bipartisan government body? And if not agree, why not?
So glad I'm going first. I think that there are some essential, well, first off, let me say this. I think that by and large, the people who sit on the Board of Education put children and their education first. And I think that we are indivisible on that. I do think that there are flavors from there. And I think that you see that in the different people who sit up at the table and how they talk and how they position themselves. The board by definition is partisan. It is set up with majority and minority representation. We cannot get away from that. And again, you do see flavors. And that's appropriate, and that's why it's set up that way. I think that the word in this case is partisan in the sense of not being able to work together. I think the board has more work to do on how to work better together. I think we need to take a good look at our governance, and we need to be on the same page about what it means to run a healthy board. And I think there's work to be done there.
Okay, Ms. Ockman?
I would agree. I think the hope is, I would agree in the sense that the board is set up on partisan lines, but when I came onto the board the day after the election, all those partisan lines disappeared. I will say, I think that there has been some push-in, but to be accurate, I don't think it's from members. I think that some of the issues that people really care about have polarized people, and so some of the feedback we get, some of the response we get from people are partisan voices. But I do find that the board generally, when they're doing their work, partisanship is out the window. You can see it on votes just last night. They were not unanimous. They were not along party lines. But they really were putting kids first and putting schools first. I would hope that continues. I currently serve as chair. My vice chair I'm a Democrat, clearly. My vice chair is a Republican. Our budget chair is a Republican, and our policy chair is a Democrat. When we are working together, we are working for the best interests of this community. And I'm proud of the board for that, and I hope that continues. I think there's always room for an improvement, and I think Darien thrives on always doing better.
Thank you. Mr. Cini.
So as an outsider, I'm coming into a new board. I think my experience shows that I ran a board that was very nonpartisan. Some of the best friends through these zoning hearings, intense zoning hearings through the years that I served on the Planning and Zoning Commission happen to be Democrats and Republicans, and I deeply respect the work that both parties did on that board. When I look to the Board of Education, I don't think it's a partisan issue. I think it's a process issue. I think there's been a lot of turnover on the board. There's been tremendous turnover on the superintendents. Tara mentioned 3, but there's actually been 7 superintendents, or 7 people that have sat in that seat since about a decade. We have 3 finance directors. So I think as a reaction to the turnover amongst the administration, there's been some struggles on the board. I think the board can be led slightly better, and that's not against a certain individual. I think that there needs to be more focus on process. Once you get the easy things done right, then you can go and have the confidence of the town to tackle the harder things. And I think what happens at some of these meetings, as we called it on planning and zoning, what we tried to avoid is going down the wormhole, avoiding getting hyper-focused on bigger issues. And I think one of my goals is to focus on big strategic issues that we're not going to be able to avoid. I'm sure we're going to get into that in a minute.
Okay, thank you. Anything further on this for anybody? I have been asked to remind the candidates to please face forward when speaking into the mic, because otherwise you don't get picked up. Okay, the next question will start with Ms. Achman. Now that Ox Ridge Elementary is underway, how do you prioritize the additional facility needs of the other 6 schools in Darien?
Oh, well, this was much of my conversation today, so it's a timely question. So years before I got on the board, there was a master plan study that was done by KG&D. John is right in the sense that it's been difficult with the turnover in superintendents to really fully implement that. I know our current superintendent has worked with our facilities chair to get up to speed and to fully understand the next steps. We look forward to hearing his recommendations at an upcoming meeting. And I think the board's been really clear. We needed to address the most urgent problems quickly, and that was Ox Ridge. There has been an amazing building committee put together by both the school and the town on that. The leadership and the work they have done is truly to be commended. And I think that we've been clear that the next step on that was addressing the portables issue. I think that if you want to talk about an issue that you will find full, unanimous support on from the current 9 members, and I'm sure, well, I don't want to speak for John, but I know he cares deeply about student safety and our facilities, that portables are the next issue that we choose to address.
Okay, Mr. Cini?
One of the things I've noticed watching the Board of Education over the years, and I talked about some of the struggles it's had with the turnover, but it's not willing to tackle the big issues. And it gets sucked into debating whether or not who runs the concession stand kitchen for a number of meetings, or talk about field trips. And so I really think that portables should be looked at in conjunction with the new school development. I think it's a legacy project that's gotten kicked down the road through different administrations and different sets of board members. And this is something we have to tackle. We talk about school security, and we have kids going outside in these separate portable units that I think is a severe risk. So I would be full proponent of tackling portables, but looking more broadly with the town on a facilities plan. I think that's something that's being missed, and I want to leverage my relationship with the Board of Selectmen, Planning and Zoning, Board of Finance, and trying to tackle some of these bigger issues on a comprehensive basis with the town.
All right, Ms. McCammon.
So I'd like to pick up on Mr. Sini's point that this is a great opportunity to start talking in a more collaborative way with town. I think that's a pretty critical thing that the Board of Education can start working on, is not existing in a silo, but really collaborating across borders that really aren't borders. But that said, I think that what we really need is a full plan. We had a conceptual design, but now we need to go to the next step. We need that to be updated. It needs to have proper funding associated with it. It needs to have timing. It needs to have built-in prioritization. And that prioritization needs to involve conversations about enrollment, about traffic planning, about safety and security, and it needs to take into account, we also need to talk about redistricting. I know it's a dirty word, but we need to have the conversation so that we can get it off the table in a proper way. We want to make sure that we're taking into account potential fluctuations in enrollment due to the state's fiscal health on the negative side and due to new developments on the positive side. So we need to do a pretty comprehensive deep dive look and come up with an actual plan with action steps that we can then go and talk to people about.
Okay, anything further on this?
I would add quickly, because I'm not sure I would totally agree that this is an issue that the board just is unwilling to take up. I think that it takes real leadership at the top level in terms of administration for educational needs for kids, for how to address them so that we can come forward with a comprehensive plan like we did on Oxridge and go through that approval process so that both the selectmen and the RTM, much like that process, feel very confident in what we're doing. So I am committed to this portable project. I am committed to a full master plan, but I certainly think the board has dealt with many big issues, and this is another one that we will continue to deal with and address.
Okay, anything further on this?
It's been an issue that's been going on for over a decade, and I'm not pointing any fingers, but it's got to be addressed.
Okay.
And so I would add, this is a safety and security issue. It's not just a facilities issue. And so I stand firm that it needs to be addressed.
Okay, thank you all. Next one goes to Mr. Sini first. While we have the best test scores in the area, how do you justify the salaries, which are less than other public schools in Fairfield County? How can we attract the best teachers when we pay less than Greenwich and New Canaan?
I'm not really that concerned. Well, first of all, we have a teacher contract, which I haven't been privy to, but I'm sure in my first days I'm going to have a enlightening moment, let's say. So we can address this year's contract, which goes out for 3 years when I get a look at it, and everybody else publicly does. I'm not that concerned with one or two comparisons. I mean, our contract negotiations, as I understand it, are basically governed by the DRG, the local area. And interestingly, even if we wanted to cut teacher salaries, which I'm not advocating, there's a lot of stringent rules on how that would be accomplished, and probably wouldn't be just based on the negotiation rules. So I think we can, if we have good test scores, as the premise said, and we're attracting good teachers. I think part of the salary issue also is the age of the teachers and the tiers that they hit throughout their careers. If we're still getting good results, we don't really have an issue.
All right. Ms. McCammon.
I will speak specifically first to Greenwich. Greenwich pays a little more because they're that much farther, and the people have to travel that much farther. And so Greenwich does understand that they need to pay accordingly. That said, I certainly do think that we need to pay our teachers. I think that we value them. They're one of our most wonderful assets, and they teach our children, and they are growing our hearts and minds of our kids. So I think that certainly it is a priority. However, I would also say that the salary process is somewhat limited by cost of living, surrounding towns, binding arbitration. It's a fairly narrow window that you're working in, and I think we are to be commended for keeping our salaries comparable to our fellow towns.
Okay, and Ms. Achman?
So, being in the negotiations process currently, I won't speak to where we are there because it's not finalized, but I will say that it is true that we pay less. The way that the contract that is currently in place, step scale, existed, it makes it hard to attract and retain young talent, and I think that what we want to do is value our teachers. All of this disappears if kids don't have good teachers. That's really what happens every single day. That's who your kids spend 6 or 7 hours with. So I think we need to make sure that our teachers are well compensated and it demonstrates the value that we see in them. What we do manage is FTEs, how many teachers we hire. And that is something we look at closely. How does that affect class size? What class offerings do we have? So I think that it's not always about comparisons, but when you're shopping around and you're looking at Greenwich or New Canaan, it's worth. I mean, the commute's further, but not that much further, especially we have teachers who come from New York, Long Island. You hit Greenwich first. Darien wants to be competitive. You never want to be at the top. You never want to be at the bottom. And I do think that the Board of Education, the negotiation teams that have come before me have done well by their teachers, and I assume this negotiation process will do well by them as.
Okay, anything further on that? All right, next question goes to Ms. McCammon first. Open Government is a financial software program to track expenditures. Should the Board of Education be utilizing Open Government to communicate with the taxpayers?
I'll just say transparency, just throw it out there to start. Yes, I am absolutely a fan of anything that provides the people who are paying their taxes the opportunity to see more clearly what their government is doing. 100%. There is no reason not to be doing it. It's already a platform in town. The board hasn't taken the opportunity to take a look at what the cost would be and what the time investment would be for us to do it, but I think it's fairly critical for us to be able to provide public information in the best way possible. I'm a firm believer in analytics, in financial analysis, and everyone having access to that.
Okay, Ms. Ockman?
So as Mrs. McCammon will remember, I think we took this issue up in a discussion of our board goals and objectives, and the board expressed that we want to be as transparent as possible. The superintendent asked us to please give him time to evaluate whether he thought this was the best program for us at this time. And the majority of the board at that time granted him that period. I think that any software or any transparency that he brings forward that can let taxpayers know exactly where their money is going will be welcomed by the board.
Mr. Sini?
All right, so I'm going to quote Mr. Zagorodsky from the, State of the Town address last year, 2018. I guess he's going to be coming up within a couple months. We have gently asked the Board of Education to adopt this product, to no avail. It's now time for the board to do so, and I wholeheartedly support that. I mean, I think this goes back to the transparency issue that also reared its head earlier on this spring. And given any information or any help that is asked by another board member of another board, provided it's not confidential, it has nothing to do with students, I'd support the immediate transparency and full cooperation. Anything less is an absolute disservice to this town and the taxpayer. And what happened, I described it earlier, was absolutely silly and a waste of everybody's time.
Okay, anything further on that? All right, next one goes to Ms. Ockman first. There has been a lot of focus on social emotional learning in the classroom. Given that most high school athletes spend a large part of their time on the field, how would we ensure that these values follow them onto the field?
I mean, I think that's the struggle we're all finding in the day and age. How do the values we instill at home follow the kids to school? How do what we instill in students at school find their way onto the field? I think your hope is that you're hiring the right people, that you're fostering the right environment, that your parents understand that none of our kids are actually college athletes yet, that extracurriculars are to enhance the curriculum. I think in Darien we are really trying to hone in, and if anyone has listened to our information on curriculum, we really have tailored our social emotional learning until exactly what we have seen in this town, and I think that takes into account the number of students we have involved in extracurricular activities.
Okay, Mr. Sini?
Could you repeat that?
Certainly.
Thanks.
Yeah, let me find it.
Sorry.
There has been a lot of focus on social emotional learning in the classroom. Given that most high school athletes spend a large part of their time on the field, how do we ensure that these values will follow them onto the field?
I think first step is parenting and putting sports in perspective. I'm the parent of 2 high school football players and a DGFL football player. I think there's some really interesting values instilled on that football field, and I know throughout sports in Darien, so I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, Ms. Okay, Ms. McCammon.
So I think the first thing is you have to be really clear about what your values are. And I'm really looking forward to us going through our strategic planning process. I've been asking for strategic planning for 5 years, whether it's through CDSP or as a new board member. I'm so excited it's coming up. And part of that will be looking at Board of Education values, and that should include the character of the people that we want to develop. From there, that includes a communication plan out to your community, so your community is on board with what you're doing, and it also should include some professional development of coaches. Coaches need to be an active part of the program that we want to create, and we need to be active in creating what that program looks like and shaping it.
Okay, let me see the elapsed times, please. Okay, All right, this is going to, people are going to get warnings during this. Some may be shorter, some may be a longer answer. This one will start with Mr. Sini. What do you think is the most important issue facing the Darien Board of Education? They say, please fully describe that one issue and how you'd address it, but you don't have that much time. Do what you can in the time you've got.
I have a minute and a half, or?
Yeah.
Are we going to 6?
We're going to 6.
Okay.
Yes. So
right.
You've got a minute and a quarter.
Okay, so I think this regionalization issue is a big issue. And even though the state Democrats took it off the agenda, it's something we have to proactively look at and react to. A lot of people were talking about affordable housing. And 10 years ago, or plus or minus, an administration passed rules and regulations that would enable the adoption of affordable housing through private developments. And that was a proactive approach. We kind of seized upon the opportunity and controlled the local effort in terms of integrating affordable housing. So really quickly, I think we can do the same thing with regionalization and sharing of services. Start with the town. Don't look at requests from the Board of Selectmen's office as an overreach. Let's look at it as a way to integrate services there. And then let's look at surrounding school districts. And look at maybe services of integrating some services or specialized classes in that way. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Ms. McCammon.
Okay. I spoke to the 2 priorities, and since I'm not being graded, I'm going to stick with 2. In my opening comments, first is the arrival of the superintendent and making sure that that leadership team is set up for success. And that means, prioritizing communication, collaboration with fellow town bodies, and sound decision-making. And by sound decision-making, I mean forward-thinking, long-term educational planning, and fiscal and management transparency at both the transactional and the analytical levels. Not just what we do, but why we're doing it. That second priority dovetails on what John is saying, which is, again, that better whole board advocacy. We need to be following what's happening in Hartford. We need to be having conversations at the board table in advance of the bills, actually hitting the legislative floor, and we need to be actually out advocating. CABE has a delegate assembly that run every November. All of the information is in here. We need to be attending that assembly. We need to be talking about it at the board table, and we can certainly do that much better than we have been.
We should give Tara more than 10 seconds to answer. Please take as much.
I can totally get it done in 10 seconds. No, I will do it as quickly as possible. The strategic plan is instrumental, and also a refocus on student needs. And even tonight, that really, we haven't gotten to that focus. So really what the Board of Education has at the heart of it is we need to be educating our children so that they can actively participate in their futures when we are done with their education, and that they are strong, capable individuals. And so hopefully our strategic plan will do that and let the public know how we are going to do that in the coming years.
Okay, thank you all. I have been told that once again I should ask this one-word answer question. Do you agree that public comment should be allowed at all public meetings, including commissions and Board of Ed? And this one starts with Ms. McCammon.
Absolutely.
Okay, Ms. Achman?
Yes.
And Mr. Sini?
I'm probably going to surprise everybody because there's certain meetings that don't require it, so maybe.
Okay, fair enough. At this point, we get to the closing statements. Timers, please reset. 1 minute each. Luck of the draw, Ms. Achman, you'll go first.
Oh, I am? I'm third. I think.
Huh?
Oh, all right.
No, that's just the way it comes out.
Oh, all right, perfect. I'd like to thank everyone and ask for their vote to be reelected to the Board of Education. I have been proud. I came in and I was chairman in my second year, which was a bit of a surprise. With that, I've weathered 3 superintendents, regionalization, and been appointed to state commissions so that, as Mrs. Stevenson said, Darien has more voices at Hartford tables. That includes the Commissioner of Education coming down for the first time to hear about Durgay and the complexities that we face. I think the more Darien can locally show the rest of the state how we do what we do so well, and we can be proud of it, and we also can have Hartford hear what our thoughts are, what we feel, and what our students see and need, the better off we'll be as a town. I welcome our new members and some members as they grow in their leadership roles. I know what it's like to sit here 3 years ago and think you have all the answers. I welcome new ideas, and I hope you embrace the complexities that we all face every single day. Thank you, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Sini.
Kind of feel that was directed towards me. So my answers are based on input that I'm hearing throughout the community. So I will listen. I realize I'm a bit of a lightning rod. Being P&Z chair for 3 years, you kind of build up some backbone. I'm willing to tackle some of the tougher issues, and we have a whopper, and it's called a budget cycle for the next 6 years. We can't continue 4.3% increases in our budget year on year for the next 7 years like we have. Our grand list is stuck. And even these new developments, if you run the math, aren't going to do much in terms of increasing the grand list. I do really want to work collaboratively with the 8 other members of my board. I've been in frequent conversation with several of them, been in frequent conversation with other town leaders, and I want to take this board out of its silo, which I think is viewed by many people throughout this town, and really bring it in together, and we'll get a full hug within the next year or so.
Okay. Ms. McCammon.
It's been a pleasure to have worked for Darien to set the educational strategy for the town and to secure funding for it for the past 3 years. It's a privilege to have such a direct impact on our community, and I'm honored to have it. I'm very proud of much of the work the board has done over the past 3 years. We have expanded our educational capacity to better educate all of our learners. We have a new high school cafeteria, and very excitingly, we have a new superintendent with a proven track record of good collaboration with fellow town bodies, and also strong experience with strategic planning. After 5 years of advocating for that, I'm excited. But there's much more to be done. There are exciting opportunities like taking proactive advantage of the way the global educational landscape is changing, both to be more efficient, but more excitingly to talk about ways that we can deliver education that we haven't thought about, and new types of education. To show most properly what Darien has done, to be our best selves, we must work together.
I want to thank you all very, very much. On behalf of the League, I would also like to thank the timers, the screeners, the question runners, most of all the audience. You had wonderful questions, and I'm sorry we didn't have time to ask them all. It's up to you. Election Day is November 5. Go vote.